1, 0.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro.
What is up, Big 12 Nation? We're back again. It's Tuesday night. That can only mean one thing. It's the New Hampshire primary. No, it's the biggest 12, man. We're back for the biggest 12. We're going to talk about more Big 12 football. There's so much to get into this offseason, so much still yet to break down from the 2023 season as we come to terms with everything that happened. We did it with the Frogs last week, and we got a very exciting show for you today, especially for you Wildcats out there. But first, I, of course, am your host, Clint Foster. You know me, love me. Hopefully you wouldn't be turning into the show if you didn't. But follow me as always, okay? You got my YouTube channel on there at Clint Foster Comedy, Twitter at Clint_Foster55, and of course, you got to like and subscribe to the Biggest 12's channel at Big 12 Voice of College Football, Big 12 VOCFB. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button, ring the bell button. You know what to do. This isn't your first rodeo on YouTube. So do the thing, man, and share the show because we got a good one today. My guest is none other than my personal favorite Wildcat. You know him. You love him. It's John Grove, ladies and gentlemen, because we are talking exclusively Kansas State Wildcats here today. We're going to do this post-mortem. John, how are you, my friend?
Oh my goodness. Well, to start things off, it has been extremely cold here, so that's why I'm wearing the little hat here. It's not because I look cool. It's been I don't where I live right now. We don't get the heat. We don't get the heat as much as several of the other rooms. So, nonetheless, though, Clint, it is great to be here. Talking some more Big 12 football, kind of putting a bow in the 2023 season. And always catching up with you because it's always a blast. It's always a blast.
Well, thank you, my friend. Thank you so much. Well, let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. Talk about the year that was. I'm going to start this with the same question that I'm asking everybody on all these postmortems. If you had to assign a letter grade to the Kansas State Wildcats 2023 season, what would you give the Cats?
I would probably have to say a B minus, and I think that's more just. I think ultimately a lot of fans are going to be considered disappointing kind of year. You know, a lot of people have always said during the preseason, like, "Hey, this is K-State's biggest opportunity to go back to back for the first time in program history, back to back Big 12 championships." But there were several hurdles K-State had to go on down the road when it came to several linebacker injuries in the first few weeks of the season. Of course, several just heartbreaking losses and just so many tight finishes to the likes of Missouri, Oklahoma State, and Texas, for that matter, as well. So I think there was several great things, especially when it comes to several of the home games. For that matter as well, where K-State was able to put up 40 plus. But I think at several points as well, there were several things to look back on and just like, man, K-State had one big opportunity to win this if this or that could have gone their way. But unfortunately, K-State finished the year 8-4. Well, honestly, it could have been worse. I would probably say 8-4 was the floor, but there were several tight games here or there where K-State, for their sakes, could have possibly tripped on as well. But you do end the season off with a win over NC State, a top 25 NC State team in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Get a little bit of a glimpse of what to expect in the 2024 season. So I'd say a B minus. I'd probably say a C if we were looking at one of those average 7-5 kind of years, which was kind of a norm early on in the Chris Kleiman era, and then kind of the ending of the Bill Snyder era, for that matter, as well. But the fact that but our floor is kind of now at 8-4 is not too shabby. It's just K-State fans were expecting just a little bit more.
I mean, you mentioned it, John. I don't know how a American in the year of our Lord 2024 can possibly be disappointed in the Pop-Tart Bowl champions. I mean, this is what something that we should all strive to be is the Pop-Tart Bowl
Oh,
champions. If
absolutely.
you're not going to be national champion, you should be a Pop-Tart Bowl champion.
It's better to eat an edible mascot as a trophy, because then you'll get food out of it. It's not like you're just going to be going home with some kind of useless trophy, ball participant trophy for that matter as well. No, you get to keep a trophy with two Pop Tarts on the top of that little trophy, and then you get to gobble up on a giant edible mascot. Like what it's like it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
It's the American dream. It's the American
That
dream.
is the American dream. That's right. That is.
I had an absolute blast watching that game. I mean, that was a fun game, and then all of the stuff afterward, it completely lived up to my expectations. But in all seriousness, I think a B is fair, whether you're a Kansas State fan or not. I think that's about the grade that I gave Kansas State when we did our first little run through talking about the 2023 season. But yeah, I mean, you're right, because you talk about it's very similar to the reason that myself and some of the Horned Frogs that I had on last week gave TCU an F, because it's relative to expectations. How did the team perform?
Right.
And Kansas State had a really good opportunity to potentially repeat as Big 12 champions, or at least be in that Big 12 championship game. It was such a wide open league this past year, and you have some really awesome games like the TCU game, absolute annihilation. But there's so many games that just slip through your fingers. I mean, the Missouri game comes to mind, the overtime loss at Texas, the loss to Iowa State, and that amazing Farmageddon in the snow. Great games, all of them, but games that were just, they were right there for K-State to get and just couldn't dot the T's and cross the I's.
We call the Iowa State game two things for this year. One, Snowmageddon. Of course, you're blending Farmageddon and the snow. And two was PTSD, which was something I really will ever forget, because our defense was getting just torched by a bunch of snow merchants, for that matter. Yeah. Like I mentioned, I mean, there was so many games, and you mentioned, but Missouri and Texas games where K-State was just neck and neck, and it didn't look as well. There were several stands in which K-State looked all around aggressive, and they had the opportunity of winning it. And then there's several other points in which the offense is stalling at certain points. The defense, it's kind of bending a little bit more than anticipated. It didn't necessarily break until the Iowa State game, for that matter. But I think another thing to point out as well, and this is no shot towards Chris Kleiman and the coaching staff, for that matter, but several of the decisions, and especially in that Texas game, really late. It just came back to bite us, especially when considering where K-State was at in terms of a Big 12 championship race, because you were looking at, hey, 1st and goal, we're inside the Texas 5-yard line. How about we just run it in there and just call it a day? How about we just get Will Howard to run the Wildcat, and we'll just call it a day in Austin and pop up the champagne bottles. But no, Texas's run defense was just completely lethal, for that matter. And I think another thing to point out is just several quarterback controversies here and there, and just which, in terms of, all right, this quarterback is better to play on this position, and then then the other quarterback, and Avery Johnson, would be better to play in this position as well. So it could go either way, and like I mentioned, so many what if scenarios throughout the season. But you know what? It is what it is.
Yeah, that's what ifs are usually the name of the game with college football or with any sport. Well, tell me this though, John. To you, what was I feel like I know what you're going to answer for this. What was the high point of the season? What was the low point of the season for you? And what was the moment where you're like, this is who we are? This game best encapsulates who this Kansas State team is this year.
Well, Clint, you can take a deep breath. It wasn't the TCU game. It was not the TCU game. I think maybe if you combine the performances of the TCU and Houston games, which were consecutively, then maybe I'd probably throw it in like the top 2 to 3 biggest peak moments for that matter. But I think I'd probably have to go with the Sunflower Showdown to end the year. I mean, you want to talk about a Kansas team that hasn't beaten K-State in the last 14 years. Everybody around here and in Lawrence, around the state of Kansas for a matter, a lot of signs are pointing, hey, this is the year that Kansas, out of all the years, could possibly beat K-State. They have a talent on the offensive side, and they got several key defensive guys that are able to make the bigger stops. And for at one point, it looked like, especially early on in the third quarter, it looked like KU was on the verge of running away with this thing. But they had several miscues here and there, especially on special teams, in which the game kind of led away for a little bit, and K-State took every initiative to just kind of claw their way back and eventually win it on the end by a Marquis Siegel interception to win the Sunflower Showdown. So I'd probably say, just because of the amount of stakes that were in the Sunflower Showdown, I'd probably have to say the K-State KU game was probably like the one that just felt the most satisfying out of all the results. And like in terms of the most satisfying results, because there was a little bit of bad blood between K-State and TCU fans this year for that matter as well. I mean, on one hand, that did feel a little bit satisfying, but Clint, you mentioned it as well. TCU had a little bit of a disappointment of a season.
A little, just a little. It's okay.
But you're also kind of looking at the TCU game in the span of 3 out of 4 weeks, where you had TCU, Houston, and Baylor, in which they kind of drew the same results for that matter as well. So I'd probably just say, in terms of the most because on times I knew we kind of had that in the bag in the 3 games, but the Kansas game is just like, oh my gosh, so tight, so close. I've been receiving a lot of texts from KU fans just pointing and bragging at me during the game when they were up by 10, and K-State came all the way back, and I got to get a little payback for that matter too. So
then, what was the low point of the season for you? Which hit harder? Was it Texas or Missouri or Iowa State?
I think just looking back at the Iowa State game, it was just a little bit deflating, just because you're playing in the snow for that matter. And I think that was what Iowa State used for their advantage. Like I mentioned, snow merchants. Because as much credit as I don't want to take anything away from Iowa State in that game. Abu Sama was just a legitimate threat, running all over the place for them. But K-State just could not make the tackles in the snow. So I think ultimately they were checked out. But the defense especially was checked out after the Sunflower Showdown. And you had several key guys who were on the verge of entering the transfer portal like the day right after, for that matter as well. So I'd probably have to say the most deflating one, just in terms of a fan, was just like the one that just that hurts so much. Texas. Texas. K-State's lost to Texas 6 years in a row prior to the game in Austin this year. Texas was up big, around 21 early on, and K-State came storming all the way back, forcing overtime. And the game was right there, Clint. The game was right there at the 5-yard line. And the fact that K-State just butchered it, just based on several play calls here and there, and as well as Texas's run defense, for that matter as well. They were a solid brick wall. I thought K-State should have thrown it in the air a little bit more often in that game. But that Texas loss hurts, especially now that they're going to go to the SEC. They're going to have the internal scoreboard against us, for that matter as well. Of course, Missouri sucks, but loss to Missouri sucks since it's an old rivalry. But it's not like it was impacting the conference title race, whereas that Texas game just felt like that was right at the tippity top to see who was going to make it to Arlington. And I think that right then and then, just kind of indicated, okay, K-State's going to have to really dig deep here in the final few games if they even want to have a shot at getting to Arlington, because it looked as if Oklahoma State was kind of in lockstep to getting there. Oklahoma was kind of up there too, but yeah, look, that Texas game hurts. It hurt.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, because you think about, there were so many teams, TCU and K-State included, who had a golden opportunity to kick Texas square in the nuts one last time on the way out the door. And it was right there for the taking. And none of us, except for Oklahoma, the one team who didn't need to do it, just none of us could cash that check. That was definitely the game that I was the most upset after. All things, everything in the season being what it was, I was very frustrated after that game. And I feel like in my older age, I've gotten to where, game results usually don't get to me. And I'm like, it's just a game. Like, it's fine. And I'll write my script or whatever. But that one, I was like, ugh. It's like so angry after that game.
And that's another thing as well. You see down here where it says KSU journalist. Like sometimes I'm supposed to kind of keep like a little bit of a cool calm. I don't want my reputation to be at stake.
Sure.
So of course I kind of tweet out like the more informal stuff. I don't necessarily go all in toxic Twitter war stuff. I mean, it's like all that chaos. Like I kind of know my limits, but that Texas game, like I was on thin ice. Like right afterwards, you did not want to be in the same room with me. Right when K-State missed, when K-State was stood on 4th and goal, like I was just so infuriated by so many things that came and gone through that game as well. And I was just red hot mad. But Missouri game, I was like, oh my gosh, that guy just hit a 62-yard field goal. Like I gotta like that's all respect right there. He used all 180 plus pounds. Actually, probably 200 plus something pounds to knock that 62-yard field goal in. But the Texas one is just like, no, we should have won the game. We should have won the game.
I know, man. I know. Well, let me ask you the question that is, I believe, on everyone's mind as far as K-State is concerned. It's certainly been on my mind. What happened? And I think I know the answer, but I want to know what you think. What happened with Will Howard? Why, of all people, would Will Howard enter the transfer portal and go to Ohio State?
I think there's several answers you can come up with in terms of. I think really what it boils down to is that he's gotten the most he could out of K-State. Remember, he started back in 2020, back when COVID really took place. He was kind of placed in a bad situation for that matter as well. So he kind of receives a lot of criticism from many K-State fans from that point moving forward. Of course, the Big 12 championship, he was able to reach that in his junior year, but I think at certain points Howard was starting to become a little bit too predictable for the defenses, and they were really going to. I mean, he was really vulnerable, especially inside the pocket presence at certain points as well. And when you look at the uprising star and Avery Johnson and how he performed against Texas Tech, I mean, his mobility was fantastic. He was incredibly fast, especially in the run game for that matter as well. I think for one, Will Howard knows that it's Avery Johnson's time at K-State because let's be real, you don't leave a generational 4-star quarterback on the bench if you're K-State. Like that is your most highly rated recruit in program history, waiting on the bench if you got Will Howard there for one more year as well. And I think that, and then on top of that, like he's got the most possible out of K-State in his 4 years, and a lot of his teammates that he's spent a lot of time with, for that matter, are going to several different directions. Cooper Beebe, NFL draft. Ben Sinnott, NFL draft. Hayden Gillum, I believe it might be NFL draft bound. We'll just have to wait and see. And several other key contributions here. Phillip Brooks, Cade Warner, from 2 years ago, he's gone as well. So it's 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 kind of as if K-State's just starting off fresh with several of the with the newer faces that they have, and I think Will Howard understood it from that point. Now, in terms of him going to Ohio State, I think that was possibly the most logical fit, just considering where he's from in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. I think he has a higher ceiling at Ohio State in terms of his draft potential, and a lot of people don't realize like he was heavily considering going to be declaring for the NFL draft before making it official in terms of going to the transfer portal and more specifically Ohio State. He was also visiting schools such as USC and Miami. To me personally, I just did not see the fits here or there. I just didn't think it would be a good cultural mix. That being said, I think he's got a big chance to end up as a potential Heisman contender at Ohio State, and especially with what the Buckeyes have returning with Quinshon Judkins, running back of Ole Miss, and then I think Emeka Ibuka, for that matter, is returning for Ohio State as well. So it's going to be. I will have a little bit of a scarlet and gray heart for Iron Will just because of what he's done for K-State, but I think when you just looking at the whole situation and everything, I think it's best I think it's about time you just turn the chapter and kind of and move forward.
Yeah, you hit on my suspicion. My suspicion was, maybe there was a little sit down with Will Howard of like, hey, we can't afford to put ourselves in a position where Avery Johnson wants to transfer, right? It is ready. Yeah. It's his time. We love you. We appreciate everything you've done, but go spread your wings at another place. Ohio State is a great situation for him. And that way you don't risk losing that new generational talent that you have coming up for K-State.
And I think even Will Howard knew that before the final game against Iowa State, just considering what several of the events that took place right after the game where he was walking off to the field in tears.
Yeah, we all saw that, yeah.
He did sign a football for a kid, though. Ohio State's got an angel of a football player, for that matter, as well. But as he goes to the locker room, he turns around and looks at Wagner Field for one more time, and just somber emotions here and there. Honestly, it got me a little bit teary-eyed, for that matter, as well. And then on top of that, he also gave kudos to the K-State media for following him and the team for many years. And that was pretty much the indication that he was going to end up in the transfer portal as well. So I think before the Iowa State game, this was already being discussed.
Yeah. All right. Well, so this is a perfect segue. Let's talk about looking ahead. What are your – we're very early on, obviously, but we do know – we don't know exactly what order, but we do know who Kansas State is playing next year. What are your expectations for the Wildcats, for Emon Nation in 2024? I'll actually share the schedule on the screen.
I think this is not just for 2024, but in the long run of things. I think it's becoming one of the more staples or perennial brands of the Big 12 Conference moving forward. And you don't have Oklahoma or Texas in the way, for that matter, as well. And, K-State has the weapons. K-State has the weapons, especially on the offensive side, to win a Big 12 championship with the likes of Jace Brown at receiver, Keegan Johnson, the transfer from Iowa. He played better late in the season. And then also Dante Cephas. K-State just landed him a wide receiver transfer out of Penn State. He'll certainly make a big key impact as well. And you also bring in You also bring back DJ Gittens as well, one of the most versatile elite running backs in the Big 12 Conference next year. So I think on the offensive side, K-State is not necessarily skipping a beat. And then on the defensive side, I think our secondary core is going to be a lot better than it was this past year, and just in terms of making more strides. They had several young guys here and there, and several guys that just didn't fit the team chemistry or didn't fit the drive of being a K-State Wildcat, for that matter, as well. So maybe if we're able to get an extra corner out of a transfer portal. That made me feel a little bit better about where the defense is. Of course, there's also been several rumors where one of our linebackers could be leaving the program just to serve as a missionary for a church trip as well, for his church as well. So that's kind of up in the air. We'll see what happens as well. But it's going to be very intriguing. I think the offense, for the most part, they'll have to rebuild a little bit in terms of the lines. But in terms of what they have in the backfield and the receiving core, like, I mean, this just screams. This just screams, hey, this team can compete in the upper echelon of a Big 12. Looking at the schedule that Clint has up, I think this favors K-State for that matter as well. Just kind of looking at several of the Big 12 title contenders, you got Oklahoma State and Kansas. They'll be coming to Manhattan this year, and then people also bring up, Arizona. Well, one, Arizona is going for a coaching change, so we'll see how things kind of transpire there. And then two, that is also considered a non-conference game since that was a series planned before the conference moves here or there. So that's still going to be counted as a non-conference game for that.
You
matter.
sure about that?
Yep. If you look, scroll up. Yep. If you scroll up, you see the Arizona date, September 14th. You don't see that with anywhere else.
Oh.
But that was already in the works. So
That's bizarre.
I know, and Baylor's doing that with Utah as well this year. They're going to go to Salt Lake City for that matter as well. So while you do get Oklahoma State and Kansas at home, who I think are going to be also contending in the top of the Big 12, K-State's got some sneaky road games. I would not be surprised to see them kind of fumble. We'll see. But Morgantown is a difficult atmosphere. West Virginia is bringing back a lot of guys. Garrett Green, C.J. Donaldson. That is going to be a difficult trip up to Milan Puskar Stadium. Who else? Of course, Iowa State. It feels as if Matt Campbell has had Chris Kleiman's number for the past few years as well. Chris Kleiman K-State won the last time in Ames, Iowa, so we'll see. Iowa State's also bringing back a slew of guys as well, so I wouldn't rule them out. Colorado, that's going to be a fierce rivalry being reunited again. We'll see if K-State's able to handle running one of our former commits in Dylan Edwards, who has just been a massive thorn to defenses everywhere in the Pac-12 last year. So that's going to be interesting. BYU is also a difficult trip. And then Tulane, I mean, look, K-State's for one, Tulane has just become the ultimate premier brand of a group of five. And we'll see what their new head coach, I think John Summerall, we'll see what he's able to do for Tulane this year. But history's not favoring K-State if they tend to go up to Tulane, because we can't win in New Orleans. We weren't able to beat.
That's true.
We weren't able to beat Tulane when we back in the 90s. We got curb stomped by Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and then in the same year, K-State also lost to Tulane in Manhattan. So it's in a way history is working against K-State, but it's going to be a little bit of a different Tulane roster from what we've seen. There isn't going to be a Michael Pratt at quarterback for that matter as well. So if you were to tell me right now in terms of where K-State should be, I'm thinking around top 2, top 4, top 4-ish teams in the Big 12, just kind of depending on how things transpire in conference play for that matter. K-State avoids Utah. That is a good sign. They also avoid UCF for that matter too. So,
you catch every other conference contender. I mean, every single other one: Arizona, Oklahoma State, Kansas, West Virginia, and I mean, I guess you could throw Iowa State in there.
Yeah.
But that I cannot get over that Arizona game. How that's not going to count for conference standings. That's so crazy.
It won't count this year, and it won't count next year when K-State plays in Tucson.
That's so wild
for that as well. So it's better than having to scratch Arizona off, and then you have to spend so many months trying to go on the phone. So it's like, hey, come to Manhattan if you want to get beat by 60 plus. Or I don't know. I was just throwing that out there, but yeah, the Arizona game, a Tulane game for that matter, it's going to be one of the bigger non-conference seasons for K-State in a long time. I honestly can't think of the last time in terms of how difficult the non-conference schedule is. For that matter, so maybe 2009. I'm just throwing that out there for that as well, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Houston, I just saw Houston as well. We'll see what they're like under Willie Fritz for that matter.
Yeah.
So I feel like I say for that matter too as well. I sound like a broken beatbox as well, but yeah,
we all have our idiosyncrasies, you know.
Oh yeah, a lot of them. That's for certain. But yeah, top 4 in the Big 12. I would be perfectly content with that. But there's still a lot of off season to go.
There is a lot can change, and you know we will see. We'll have several months here to think about it and ruminate on it, and you know I'll do my best to certainly once the summer arrives, put out as many funny sketches as I can about all of it. So, well, John, do you have anything else that you want to throw out there before you start plugging stuff? I mean, that was all of my discussion points.
I can't say that I do. Honestly, I'm just eager and looking forward to seeing where each team is on the schedule starting next week, because that's when the Big 12 announces like which week is where in terms of how the schedule's set up. I do have a few trips planned. I'm likely going to Colorado. We got a lot of family in Boulder, so that's going to be fun. Should be going to Iowa State too. For the as well, so I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a brand new day in the Big 12. Like holy smokes! Like now we're bringing in 8 teams in the last 2 years. It's like give some time to digest. Like it's it's like my gosh, it's been like a whirlwind trying to figure out all these teams for that matter as well. And hopefully the Big 12 we're able to see. A very strong competitive league to the point where they can field at least 2 teams into the playoff as well. Like, hey, if K-State doesn't make the playoff, and if we see 2 teams like Oklahoma State and Utah make them, and shoot, I will be Big 12 all day, because I want to see this conference stride for sure. It's going to be a lot of fun.
You know, I did just think of one other thing for you, because this is a football show, but let's be honest, the Big 12 is a basketball conference. So I want to know if you have any hot takes on the whole situation that lit TCU and K-State Twitter ablaze most recently, that being TCU losing its entire women's basketball team to injury and being forced to cancel the K-State game, and the fallout that happened as a result of that. Do you have any hot takes on that, or of the whole Twitter spat over the suggestion that perhaps TCU women's basketball players are brawling at practice and that's why everyone's injured? Did you follow any of that?
I briefly followed a little bit of that. I will say in terms of TCU having to cancel 2 of their games, I was like,
yeah, because NCAA rules.
Like you're canceling 2 of them, but you can still field a basketball team you can still field a team as well, but maybe
we had 6 healthy players at the time, and NCAA rules are you have to have 8, right? Because also some of those players were on limited minutes, so we had to have open tryouts, and there's 4 new walk-ons, one of which is from the volleyball team. Okay. Who are now allowing us to play in the game tonight against UCF. I mean, it's crazy, crazy.
Well, I kind of have the same thoughts in terms of several of my K-State peers on Twitter. Like, I think there's something more to this, but I didn't pay too much attention to it, because I'm just kind of looking more in terms of in terms of I'm a forward thinking guy. I just kind of like throwing the stuff behind me. It's like, oh, cool. Well, I mean, we'll take it. I mean, I'm sorry for the people that had tickets for the game in Fort Worth. Hopefully, they got their refunds. But I mean, hey, we'll take a win without having to do the hard work as well. I mean, I feel a little bit bad for TCU, but it is the way it is, and a little bit of rest to prepare for KU. at Saturday. They were able to pull it off, and then they were able to beat Baylor on Monday night. And now this team could be potentially staring at they could potentially be the number one team in the country next week if they're able to beat BYU on Saturday.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's crazy times.
Absolutely. It's crazy is the operative word for TCU fans from a women's basketball perspective, because this season began literally as, without a doubt, the greatest women's basketball team in TCU history.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, within the course of less than a week, you have like 6 players get injured and we're having to cancel games and hold open tryouts. It's like, wow, that is a heel turn for you. Life comes at you fast, right?
Oh yeah, it certainly does. Like it just catches you in the blink of an eye. Just Big 12 basketball in general. I'm having a hard. I'm just having a hard time to just thinking what it truly is. It's like a double-sided sword, or an absolute just. It's like. I know this is a football channel, but I just got to put it out there. It's like a combination of the old Big East, the 1970s to 90s NFC East, Ally Frazier 1, 2, and 3, and what the heck, a battering ram or a sledgehammer of a conference. It's just absurd. It's absolutely absurd.
No, yeah, it's been said before, and I'll say it again. The Big 12 in basketball is what the SEC thinks it is in football, right?
Boom.
There's not a single day off. Everybody is amazing. UCF is beating Texas. Cincinnati is winning. Cincinnati was never thought to be bad in the first place. But TCU's going to play Oklahoma State in men's basketball tonight, and
Kansas lost to the two of the 3 worst teams, and UCF and West Virginia for that matter as well. So anything goes, man. It is hectic. That said, I think it's going to be even more hectic when football season arrives. You're just looking at so many competitive teams. There's no clear, distinct favorite to win the Big 12 for that matter as well. And I think maybe at one point it is it's going to be too competitive to the point where you're going to see so many teams beating up each other. But at the same time, it's like, oh my gosh. Anything can go. Anything can go. I'm just so excited for the future of this conference, and
man,
just to see where it goes.
Well, that concludes our Kansas State post-mortem. Y'all be sure to tune in next week. The plan is to do West Virginia next week, so I'll let you know on Twitter if any of that changes. But shouts out to Joey and Tim and all the West Virginia fans who are usually in the chat. It's going to be all Mountaineers. It's going to be all Climb Trusting next week if the plan holds. But John, for now, why don't you go ahead and plug some stuff, tell the people where to find you, tell the people everything that they need to know.
Well, I will say, but before we wrap things up, West Virginia was my second team last year. I kind of adopted second team. So we'll see who it is this year. TCU's kind of in the running for that. In terms of where you can follow me, K-State Game Day on Instagram. Keeping up to date on all K-State sports, and my podcast as well. It's called The Cat Attack. It will be airing every Thursday night on the K-State radio station called Black at 91.9. So you don't want to miss out on that as well. There's a lot of great stuff coming up for your boy John Grove. But Clint, it was an honor to be on the show again. Looking forward to talking more Big 12 and K-State. Whatever, what chaos? Anything that goes in this dang conference.
You are our boy, John. You're the internet's boy. Everyone's favorite Wildcat. Y'all, please subscribe to the show at Big 12 VOCFB. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the things, and tune in. We're here every Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. Be sure to follow me as well on YouTube. It's at Clint Foster Comedy. On Twitter, it's at Clint_Foster55. Until next week, I love y'all. I hope your team wins. Be safe, stay warm, and go Big 12.
Yes.